Hey guys, welcome back. Keith and Julie back with you to get into some deep discussions, hopefully some discussions that you'll find interesting and beneficial. Maybe we will touch on some things that you've thought about, maybe some things that you haven't. One of the probably, I don't know if it is, I started to say one of the most famous statements in the Bible, actually a question, was when Yeshua was on trial and he was standing before Pilate, and Pilate said, "What is truth?" And then he walked out and allowed the crowd, the majority, the democracy, the mob, to determine the fate of Yeshua, although Yeshua had already explained to him that the only power that he had was power that his heavenly Father, that God himself had delegated to Pilate. So, it makes you wonder when Pilate asked, and by the way, that's in John 18, I forget what verse it is, but John 18, verse 36.
Got some notes here.
Yeah, I've got a few notes, but a lot of times we don't stick with them very well. But Pilate asked that question, and then he didn't appear to even wait around for the answer. And so a lot of times, we miss, not only are we separated by millennia and customs and language, but also many times expression and tone, because we weren't there at that meeting to really know. Was Pilate merely being sarcastic? Was he being flippant? Was he being philosophical? Was he really being authentic and saying, what is truth? But I get the feeling that even though he might have even asked the question genuinely, that he really didn't care that much what the answer was.
Yeah, I mean, to me, just how I've taken it, it seems to be kind of a philosophical question. Also kind of a question tinged with some callousness of the world and how everybody has an opinion. Rome has an opinion, we have an opinion, you have an opinion, Jews have an opinion. What is truth in all of this kind of crazy climate where no one can come together? What is truth? Mm-hmm. How can you prove it? Mm-hmm. Kind of almost like kind of throwing that out there like it's not provable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is, one thing that we've talked about here, not on video before that I can recall, but we had thought, you hear this phrase quite a bit in our culture. I'm not sure when exactly it started or who originally coined the phrase, but they talk about speaking your truth, or some Hollywood celebrity or someone in an interview will say, talk about my truth, of speaking my truth or expressing my truth. And frankly, I usually find that a little tedious and irritating, and it gives me a lot of insight into that person normally. Well, I mean, a lot of other things do too, into the thinking and personality of that individual, but I'm not a fan of that little catchphrase. But
I don't necessarily feel the same way, but
well, okay.
Well, no, you say but, so go ahead and finish your sentence. I agree somewhat, and I disagree
I'll let
somewhat.
you be the but. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know what you were going to say, and this may be too early to kind of get into some of this, but a lot of times when you hear that, I have some of the same reactions a little bit, depending on who's talking, but then when you really do think about it in truth, I mean, part of the hero's journey, part of working out your own salvation with fear and trembling, is coming into a sense of what is true for you inside yourself, in your own integrity, to start to live according to that code that's in you, with what you know, with where you are. And so, like when I have said what is, and I don't necessarily say now my truth, I'll say, and it may be the same thing, but I'll hear myself say things like, what's true for me? Mm-hmm. What's true for me? And mm-hmm. I'm not trying to negate that there is an objective truth out there. I'm just trying to take responsibility for my part of where I am in the path and what I see with what I know with what I'm practicing. What's true for me is this at this point. It may not necessarily be true for everyone. Not everyone may be where I'm at. They may not see the world the same way. But what's true for me right now, trying to be in my integrity. But the difference when I say it, or even if I were to say my truth, is that I understand that there is an objective reality out there that I may or may not be aligned to. So there's always a sense of respect when I say that this is my truth, or this is what's true for me now. However, I have to do the work of trying to ping against the divine standard to see if what is true for me now is as true as it can be.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I think a lot of people might not understand, not that it's real deep or anything, I think that a lot of people maybe haven't built the muscle to recognize certain things, because some superficial Hollywood celebrity could say my truth and they be disingenuous, superficial, whatever adjective you want to add to that.
Willfully blind.
Yet that is separate from are the words true? So someone can be saying something that the words are true, yet the intention or their spirit is untrue. Like contrary-wise, you could have someone who is knowledgeable or an honest person that tends to deal in truth and reality, and may not always be the same things. Maybe we can get into that. Yet that is not insurance that everything they say is correct.
No.
And so I think that's an important thing, to just because someone has credibility with you doesn't mean that the things that they're saying, everything they say is true and right and correct. Likewise, just because somebody, it reminds me of a proverb. What does it say? Basically, it says a proverb in the mouth of a fool is like a an earring in a sow's ear, or something like that. I'm butchering but essentially that's what it says, is that it just isn't very comely or very what's
well,
the
it's not
word?
putting its best foot forward, certainly. Yeah,
but
and there's no grounding for the
a
truth
fool
of it. Yeah.
can speak a proverb or something deep, but it's just not very seemly or comely or
have power.
Yeah, it doesn't have that. And so, you know, I think that's a component to look at.
Yeah,
the words in contrast to maybe the person or the intention. An evil person, Hitler, you know, is always a good example. You know, and you hesitate, and I do always hesitate to even bring him up, because then you run the risk of somebody running and trying to twist your words and say, well, you know, Keith was complimenting Hitler or something like that. If one were to say, like, well, some observation maybe that he made or insight that he had in, you know, creating the production of Volkswagens or whatever, or the interstate highway or whatever. Just because an evil, maniacal person come up with the idea doesn't mean always that the idea is bad or wrong or stupid.
Well,
and likewise, you just kind of have to rightly divide the word of truth, whether you're talking about the scripture or things that we encounter in life.
Well, most people and most things aren't completely good or completely bad. And part of critical thinking and part of being honest and being, to me, walking a spiritual path of wisdom is being able to discern and extricate pieces of truth or a value or something that's done well out of a cluster like that. Like if his Volkswagen does well, then it does. And it's, sorry, I'm having to clear my throat. You don't gain anything, in my opinion, by ignoring or not recognizing those facts. You're not saying that everything that he did or stood for is okay because his Volkswagens work well, or that his interstate idea or whatever it was, that all the stuff that he did and the building projects. I mean, you're not saying that you agree with him, and this is part of a nuanced conversation. It's part of a critical thinking conversation.
Absolutely.
Where you have to be able to come in and say, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater
Right.
here. I mean, there are times to be really black and white, but those are not most of life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's different when someone who has looked at nuance and asked for wisdom and sought the truth from multiple perspectives, when, like a prophet in the scriptures, when they get to a black and white space and the word of the Lord comes to them and says, say this to Pharaoh or say this to somebody, and it's very black and white. It's very different when someone in that position is black and white and someone who hasn't gone to ask the questions or do any examination. They're not educated about what they're talking about, and they just fall out in a very black and white position without giving anything any thought. It's not the same thing.
And often there's a dishonesty and disingenuousness of just like him, and I want to get off the subject of him
Hitler?
pretty quick, but yeah, but like someone could, so many people are disingenuous and deceptive and dishonest and twist words and make just words crooked. And so, like, for those of you guys that know me, Julie and I actually are both artists. And so, you know, somebody might say, so you're an artist, you like art. And, you know, well, Hitler was an artist. So that means that, so
you're a Hitler
so
lover.
yeah. I mean, it's like, what? I mean, like, or you like Volkswagens or whatever, so you know, try to link you into some villain rather than the substance of what you're talking about. And so that's a tactic that's used often to discredit people, and it's really underhanded and dishonest, and it's a fallacy. It's not using critical thinking.
No, and you don't want an even playing field where issues are debated. You're just trying to quickly discredit them and mischaracterize them so that, oh, you love Hitler, I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say.
Oh yeah, a lot of these labels nowadays of homophobic, transphobic, anti-vaxxer, all of these labels that people come up with and throw out are meant to basically eliminate any conversation and real quickly just paint a negative label over the person so that no one actually listens, and you can't really have an honest, objective discussion. You mentioned the word facts, and I think that that's something that really should be brought into the discussion when you're talking about truth, because Pilate's question, what is truth? A lot of people would say, well, truth is something that's factual. Truth is something that is, and I told this story an awful lot. One of the most impacting days that I ever spent in a college classroom was in a philosophy class, and I think it was like the very first day of this philosophy class that I had, and I think I got more out of that class than any other class that I probably ever took anywhere maybe. And the professor came in, I believe it was the first day, and he asked the students, he said, can anyone tell me what is the definition of a fact? What is a fact? And so everyone, or a lot of the students, begin to try to give their own definition and say, well, you know, a fact is what something that is true, something that can be proven, something that, you know, a lot of those kinds of answers that he got, and the professor said, no, that's not true. That's not what a fact is. He said, a fact is what the majority of educated people believe to be true in any given point in history.
It's frightening.
And so it was really eye-opening. It was really a paradigm shift when he said that, and I began to really let it sink in and consider it, of how it was once a fact that the world was flat. It was once a fact that we were in a geocentric universe, and the sun and everything else revolved around us. It was, there's so many of these. It was a fact that a lot of these foods, often coffee or eggs or different things, they're bad for you and they're harmful. And then in a little while later, if you wait just a little while, it will come out, no, actually this food is good for you. We thought it was bad for you.
Which is itself not nuanced, because maybe it's not good for some people and it's fine for others. There's nuance. It's not black or white. And
this is, well, another good example. I've heard several variations upon this, but as the railroad system began to develop and advance, a lot of the wizards of smart, the scientists, the people in the know, were very concerned because as the trains began to be faster and faster, they were very concerned about how difficult the trauma that this could inflict on the body, because for one, they believe that if a woman were to move over 60 miles per hour, I think, that her uterus would fall out.
Well, and why the uterus? Like, why not somebody else's intestines? I mean, why does it have to be?
I don't know.
Why do they focus on
there must have been some anecdotal situation that, and then it just began to be passed on, became urban legend, which became fact, which became what was taught in the colleges. And
thanks for your concern, but
think about what was taught in the colleges, you know, a decade ago, or 100 years ago, or 500 years ago,
or 2 years ago.
Yes, and think about the people in the area of science and medicine and the things that they told you 2 years ago about mask, about if you wore a mask or you didn't, and how if you took certain things, how you were protected and you wouldn't have to worry about anything or wear a mask, and that you wouldn't spread anything to anyone else. And those were
considered facts.
They were given as facts at the time by something posing as science, but
well, and the thing is, I don't have a problem with someone who doesn't know what they're dealing with taking a general consensus of people that, like doctors and scientists. I don't have a problem with that, and giving us the consensus. But then, and this is the difference between facts and truth, and the honesty to try to investigate both and to close the gap between both. Once you see that your fact isn't matching up the way you thought it did, or you know, it's not what you thought it was, that your hypothesis is not like you said, then it's your responsibility to conform to what the conditions and the truth are, what they show. And whether or not that's with spiritual things or things like you're talking about, I still consider that a spiritual practice.
It is,
very much a spiritual practice, because
well, you've got to have honesty.
Well, you do. Whether you're a scientist, whether you're a religious person, whether you have to have honesty to get to the truth. And if the truth isn't the most important thing to you, then why do anything? Because then anybody can make up any world or any story and say that it's true when it's not true, and it has no grounding in basis, in reality. Therefore, it really doesn't have any power. You know, little kids make up stories, but the difference between little kids' stories and what people are doing now is the little kids know that they're make-believe.
Right.
They're not being dishonest,
well,
they're just make-believing. Whereas adults who practice this, at some point, to continue turning from truth, you have to practice some form of dishonesty.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And like, where if you're going to be dishonest and you're going to turn your face away from truth, and which is really what is going on with a lot of this. In a lot of cases, this my truth, what it means to what the intention behind it is that I don't like the truth, in many cases hate the truth, and I'm going to make myself God, and I'm going to determine what is truth, and I'm going to say what is truth. And so if my truth now is that I'm a African-American woman, or that I'm a non-binary hippopotamus or whatever, and there are people that I think that I'm some sort of animal, or polyamorous, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual.
Well, all those distinctions kind of seem to. What's the point if everything goes? Just say I'm in everything.
This is where taking my truth in a perverse direction, you end up with no truth, and you end up with chaos and insanity and evil and wickedness. And so you have to, and it deserves its own video or series of videos, and maybe we can do that at some point, on understanding subjectivity and objectivity. So we have to understand, and you basically hit on it, that our personal viewpoint or truth, or what we believe to be truth at any given point in time, and I think that we have to be honest enough to say that, let me ask you, what you believe as truth right now in this moment, is it the same as what you believe to be truth a year ago or 6 months ago or 10 years ago? Chances are there's some big things that you thought were true that now you know are not, or things that you thought were not true that you now know are true. And so what happened was the objective truth didn't change.
Right.
Like
That's exactly
God is truth, and God changes not. And so the ultimate universal reality of truth is what it is. It's the I am. The truth is I am. It is. However, our relationship and understanding to that truth is subjective and ever changing. Hopefully we're aligning to it more and more and becoming more and more entrained to and transformed by that truth.
Well, and we have choices to make about what we are. We're given certain freedoms and choices, but then other things not so much. You know, I can be a mailman, I can be a nurse, I can be, and if you're not a nurse, you shouldn't be posing as a nurse. But you can go get the education and the training and go through the credentials and go through the process. It's kind of like citizenship if you're not of this country. Nobody that I know is against people coming in here legally. Nobody that I know of personally, and I'm not saying nobody exists out there, but nobody that I know personally, there's a process to go through to become something, but you're given the option to come in. You're given all of these options, kind of like in the garden. It said they could eat of all of the trees of the garden, except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So they didn't just have two options. They had all these options. They just said, it was don't eat this one, because there's an objective truth here that you can eat the rest of these as you will. Apparently, at least what's written there's no limitation that I'm aware of, you can eat of all the trees of the garden except for this one.
That was the only limitation.
Yes, right. And so it's like what I'm seeing now in society is, and you see scriptures about this where the people say, I will throw off his bands. And I don't...
Psalms chapter 2.
Yeah, it's like I won't allow any limitation on me, and people who won't accept limitation on them are tearing down creation with their hands. And they don't see that. They're tearing down their own life, how they live their life. There has to be limitation and flow. There has to be limitation there, which is to say there are laws, divine laws, civil laws, there are rules. There are places you cannot cross and be benefited by, and there are consequences to crossing laws. Nobody, so much of our society, they just don't want to hear that.
No, and hopefully, if you're watching us, you've got the sense and discernment and character to understand I'm sure you do, a lot of these things that we're talking about. But it's spreading, and it's becoming worse by the day,
because
seemingly
people are agreeing
exponentially quickly. Yeah, it's getting really bad. I don't have to tell you that, but where we have to always be vigilant and be careful and be checking ourselves. One of the main things that Yeshua the Messiah warned his disciples about was deception, particularly when we're talking about the last days deception. And so once again, you have to be honest and aware enough and conscious enough to realize that we all have been deceived before by different things. There's things that we believe that we thought was true, or people that we found out we were wrong about and we were deceived. Well, if that's true, and you can acknowledge that, and I can too, wouldn't we both be fools to think that that couldn't happen again, and that now somehow we're immune to deception and what we believe about politics or theology or science,
ourselves, the God, the world,
is exactly correct, and
right.
Yeah, I mean, that's really a pretty foolish way to approach it. But as we get, so what do we base? How do we know the truth? There's a lot of, there's a lot of answers and things that really kind of have to be looked at there. But a lot of, unfortunately, they're tools, but most people base a lot of what they refer to as truth based upon their physical senses. And so I've heard people, you have too, so often I've heard people say, well, if I can't see it, I don't believe it. And
that's not true.
Which is, no, it's false. Once again, it sounds great until you scrutinize that statement and think about it a little bit, because I've asked that question. I go into prisons, do prison ministry, and sometimes I've asked that kind of question, are you that kind of person that says, unless I see it, I don't believe it? And I'll say, well, then you must not believe in black holes,
or electricity,
or atoms,
or wind,
or ultraviolet light, or infrared light,
or God.
Or, yeah. A dog can hear sounds that you can't. And just because you can't hear them, based upon your faltering senses, because they're as a general rule, they're getting worse by the day. Your sight, your hearing, all of these things are not usually improving. The older you get, your senses are not even as reliable as they used to be. But you have to, we even though they're tools, we can't judge and determine truth only based upon our senses, and our senses can fail us. They can be fooled. There are things now, and as technology develops more and more, used to, if someone saw a photograph or video of something, well, it proves it right there. No, not any longer. Because all of that can be faked very effectively. I mean, it's amazing, the technology. And so the technology has enabled us to create things that will fool the eye. A good magician, that's what he does, is fool the senses and makes you believe things happened that really didn't happen.
Like Hollywood.
Yes, and that's what the adversary, Hasatan, the devil, does. So I'm assuming that most of you who watch Julie and I are people who are on some level pursuing truth, and you want to have more truth, and you want to walk in greater honesty and integrity and in truth. But we have to realize we can all be fooled, and I would encourage you, if you haven't ever seen it, to go on and maybe go on YouTube sometime and type in Yanny and Laurel. And there's a lot of different exercises like this, but real quickly, this one, it's a sound that's recorded, and you can go on there and listen to this voice, this sort of electronic sounding voice, say this word repeatedly. And about half the people hear the voice saying Yanny, and about half the people hear the voice saying Laurel. And if I say those words Laurel and Yanny to you, they don't really, to me, sound hardly similar at all.
Except they do on this thing.
They do. And people, if you were to do a test, and you have maybe 100 people, and you go in and you have them listen, well, approximately half of them will say that the voice said Yanny. About half will say that it said Laurel. And so half of the people, their truth was that it said Yanny, and half of them, their truth was that it said Laurel. Well, objectively, it didn't say Yanny. Spoiler alert, if you go check it out. Objectively, the recording is saying Laurel. But the experience, the subjective experience that a lot of people, I guess millions probably, if you continued this experiment and did it, that would experience, and their truth would be the wrong answer. Their subjective truth or reality would not be the same as the objective truth.
Which doesn't have to be a problem, because I've heard Yanny.
I've heard them both too.
More often than I've heard Laurel. I've done it a few times. And so do I come under guilt and condemnation because what was true for me in the integrity of my heart and my senses, I heard Yanny, and that is the truth. I heard Yanny. So for me to say, I heard Yanny, that's true.
It is.
Because
true.
That's what I heard. Now, if I say, I heard Yanny, and Yanny is what it's saying,
yes,
that's different.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the authority or jurisdiction to put my finger on the scale of what is objectively true. I have to stay in my lane and say, I heard Yanny, and Yanny is what I heard. And so if it actually says Laurel,
that's my experience,
then I need to figure out if that's a problem for me. And if it's a problem, then I need to try to figure out how to hear Laurel, or in an experiment like this, I just let it be what it is without adding to or taking away from the fact that I heard something that wasn't objectively true, and just let it be what it is and file it away. I think so much of the time when we have an authentic experience for ourselves and we're honest about it, and then we find out that somehow that doesn't align to objective reality, we feel this pressure to either to make it one or the other, and you can't. I understand the impulse to try to make your experience line up with an objective truth because you don't want to be on the wrong side of objective reality, but you need to just pause and not try to rewrite things and just let it be what it is, and try to figure out an organic way to come into more alignment with what is objectively true. And that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is to say, I don't care what it says, I know what I heard, and that's what it is. No, because at that point you're lifting your neck and your head up, you're becoming lofty and arrogant to rule over, or you know, what is it, exalt yourself over what is objectively true, and you don't have the right to do that. And I think that's the biggest problem with society right now. They are not humble enough to say, you know, I'm not sure why this was my experience. I don't know why I heard Yanny. I really don't. If Laurel's what was being said, I'm not sure why I heard Yanny, but I'm going to be honest about what I heard, and then I'm going to humble myself to God, or to whatever it is that is an authority, a true authority, and I'm going to try to figure out if this is a problem and if I need to course correct, and sometimes maybe it isn't. But to just acknowledge it in truth, humble yourself to what is true, not necessarily to everybody around you, but to humble yourself to what is true, and then ask the question, is this something that I need to try to conform to? I think that's the right way to go through all of this.
Well, once again, like, I do artwork, and I've been doing that my whole life, and so, like, if I'm doing a portrait of someone, for example, and if I'm doing a portrait, I need to understand about light, I need to understand about color, I need to understand some things about anatomy, and I need to understand some things about human psychology, composition, all this kind of stuff. But I also have to do my best to detach from what I think I know and try to, as objectively as I can, see what is, and then as honestly and carefully as I can represent the truth, my truth, that I'm seeing based upon the objective truth, and try to make those things unified. And so the more I practice and the better I get at it, I can begin to cause my subjective experience, my representation of truth, match the truth closer and closer, and because the gap between those things to be less and less. There's another area that I would, a couple of the things I would like to mention right quick, in light of, because this my truth thing, usually when I hear it, it's sort of like nails down a chalkboard, and is, like I said, an irritation. But I think that we should recognize the truth in my truth. And in the book of Revelation, chapter 10, is a real good example, and Julie talks about this quite a bit. There's an angel that is interacting with John here, And it says that in verse 9 of chapter 10 of Revelation, and I went unto the angel, well, there's a voice in verse 8. It says, and the voice which I heard from heaven spake unto me again, and said, go and take the little book, or the scroll, which is open in the hand of the angel, which standeth upon the sea and upon the earth. And I went unto the angel, and said unto him, give me the little scroll, the little book. And he said unto me, take it, and eat it up, and it shall make your belly bitter, but it shall be in your mouth sweet as honey. And so he took the scroll, and he did what the angel said, and he had that experience that the angel said he would have.
Well, it just, I guess, I've talked about it in the course of talking about spiritual alchemy, of having to eat, you know, to digest and to eat the scroll of whatever is true, and letting that digest through your system, understanding that maybe like what we've been saying, that maybe your experience is not quite aligning to objective truth or whatever, but understanding that what you're eating is a perfect standard of whatever it is.
The scroll is the objective truth.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
He's offered the scroll to eat, the objective truth, but
you have to eat it.
As he begins to consume the objective truth, it has to become part of him. It has to become his truth.
It has to become part of his subjective reality.
Yes.
Like if the angel's handing out duplicate exact scrolls to 10 people.
Yeah.
It's going to be the same scroll going in.
Yes.
But then in this analogy, it could change kind of its chemical makeup, how it works through different people's systems.
Be expressed differently.
Yes, and what nutrients get extracted, and what lessons get extracted and worked out in a person. I mean, it's going to have to go through the whole digestive system, an alchemical system in the body. And, you know, this is sweet. It's sweet in your mouth. Like, it sounds good to say, oh, I want God's truth, and I want to know the truth, and I want to be a good critical thinker, and I want to have good discernment, and I want to be wise. That's sweet going in. But then, what is it? Yeshua have said, count the cost.
It can be difficult to digest that truth.
Well, and when it hits our stomach, it's not... Our stomach is not on the same level or wavelength as heavenly beings' stomachs. I mean, I don't even know how to say it. We're synthesizing spiritual truth, but we are human beings in a fallen state, in a fallen world, and so it's going to be bitter in a lot of ways. It's going to show us where we're off from it, which is a bitter pill to kind of swallow.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but we all, in the search for truth, we're all going to have to humble ourselves. We can't take our scroll of our truth and go shove it in the angel's mouth. Like, it doesn't work that way. And so for people who are not believers and don't believe that the scriptures are an authority, I kind of understand why they would take a lot of issue with what we're saying in our video. But for people who are believers, this is kind of, we've been talking about this a little bit, looking at our society. For people who profess to be believers, who don't even know the scriptures, and I'm not saying I couldn't know them better or refresh my memory in certain obscure passages or whatever, but being able to know it and synthesize it the way God intends, and to actually use that as a basis for decision making.
Yeah,
all
as
decisions,
your plumb line.
All decisions, like with our relationships, with our politics, with our religious ideals. I mean, with how we deal with people, with how we deal with animals, with how we deal with ourselves, with God and the world. If everyone who professes to be a believer really actually start using this book as the basis, and yes, be in their integrity and their truth with it any step of the way, because we're not all at the same level, but working toward conforming to what they find there, then our lives would transform.
Yeah. Essentially just by being honest, and being honest in not rejecting something that's different just because it's different to you. This is the, you know, there's like 45,000 different denominations in Christianity, last I read.
It's about as bad as gender.
And there's probably a similar spirit and connection with those two things, really. But when you kind of taking it back to the Yanny, Laurel, you may have all of these different denominations and they're hearing different things, and that may be their genuine, authentic, subjective experience, but it doesn't mean that it is the same as the objective scroll.
Right.
And so we have to be open to acknowledging, just because I'm hearing Yanny, just because I'm seeing a certain belief or idea, doesn't mean that that really is the objective truth. Or just because I'm not experiencing or hearing something doesn't mean, just because I can't hear the dog whistle doesn't mean it's not there. Just because I can't see infrared light or ultraviolet light doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just because I'm not able to perceive certain truths that are beyond me doesn't mean they're not there. Just because I can't see certain things. I'm reminded of, I want to hit on a couple of other quick examples, if I might. In the book of Joshua, the children of Israel Moses has passed away. Now Joshua has taken the lead, and they've crossed the Jordan, and they're getting ready to go in and begin the process of possessing the promised land. And there's this strange character that shows up, and he's arrayed in battle clothing, and Joshua looks at this guy and he says, "Are you for our side? Are you for us? Or are you for them, for our enemies?" And this man said, "Neither, but as captain of the host of the Lord am I here." And so that's a real good example of what we're talking about, of objective truth versus subjective truth. And so he is the objective truth. The captain of the Lord's host is the personification of truth entering into our realm. Joshua naturally wants to know, are you on our side or are you on their side?
It's a good question.
Are you on our side, or are you on the other denomination side, or the other political party side, or whatever disagreement there is? Are you on ours or our opponent's side? And he says, neither one. I don't have a dog in this hunt. That's not the way I view it.
I serve God.
Essentially, the real question is whose side are you on,
Right.
Joshua?
Right.
Are you on my side is the question, not whose side am I on.
Are you going to conform to me?
And so that is, basically, are you going to become, in your subjective experience, aligned to me? That's how I become for you, is if you're for me. There is maybe one of the best examples that I can think of that really sort of illustrates the idea of objective truth versus subjective truth, or my truth, is a story in the book of Acts, chapter 19, verse 14. In this story, there are these brothers known as the 7 sons of Sceva, and they're trying to cast out a demon out of someone. And it goes awry. It's a complete catastrophe.
Well, they got a rise out of the demon.
They did, and ultimately, the possessed person chases them down the street and beats them up and tears their clothes off, and they're running down the street.
At insult to injury.
Yeah.
You're not only running, you're getting your clothes ripped off as you're running.
They're naked and abused. And the technique that they used is really telling, because what they said was, come out of him in the name of Yeshua, or Jesus, that Paul preaches. Now, they had the correct formula. They had they were holding the objective truth in some ways.
And they were trying.
And they were trying, and their intention was good. The problem was, it wasn't their truth. So they said the right things. They had the right, come out of him in the name of Yeshua that Shaul preaches. Jesus that Paul preaches.
And you get the issue, the crux really quickly, because the demon or demons responds, and based on the response of the demon, you really understand the issue. Well, Jesus I know and Paul I know, but who are you?
That's exactly, yeah. And that should be repeated. That is what they got an effect. Sure. And the demon spoke and said,
and got feedback.
Yeshua, I know who Yeshua is, and I know who Paul is. Who are you? I don't know who you. You don't have the goods, authority, boys.
To adjure me.
You don't have the gravitas. You don't own it. And so that is the difference between the objective truth out there existing and us taking that scroll, that objective truth, and digesting it and having it become part of an alchemical process, and we're owning it. And you can tell the difference, but most people, I find, and I don't mean to be critical, most people, it doesn't seem, have the discernment to recognize what I'm talking about here, because there's lots of whether it's political leaders or religious leaders that are absolutely phony, and that adopt these affectations and the quivering voice and all of this that is totally BS crap. That it is not
just crap, but BS.
Yeah,
crap.
BS is worse than just regular BS, kids.
Double crap.
But yeah, it is, and so many people just suck it up and just people are unable to discern truth from theater and drama.
Well, and it makes them feel good because it's what they're used to, and so it comforts them. It's something familiar, and yeah, that's what I believe, and yeah. So their own subjective feeling state or mental state of what they believe, it reinforces what they already believe and feel to be true. So they give it attention, give it power, or whatever. But if you want to grow and actually be in the truth, you're going to start asking some questions, kind of like the little kid that with the emperor's new clothes. You know, in his innocence, he's like, he's naked. Like, I don't know what y'all are seeing, like, but he didn't have any clothes on. Like, he wasn't afraid to just speak his truth, and his truth happened to align with the truth. He didn't have an agenda. Well,
and I hear it all the time. People tell me, they'll send me videos, or they'll tell me about their pastor or some person that they've seen on YouTube or something, and it's like, oh, you know, this guy's so great, and he's a anointed man of God.
Maybe
and he preaches right out of the Bible. Just because you quote a scripture doesn't mean that's what's happening, and most people don't have that discernment.
Well, Satan used scripture.
Yeah, he absolutely did. And so you have to, all of us have to develop discernment. We have to become more and more intimate subjectively with the truth, with the objective truth, if we're going to be able to distinguish and discern the difference between counterfeits and that which is authentic, between truth and theology.
And it starts
just because
in here. It starts in
it here. Does. By being honest throughout the day, when you come near pieces of information and how you interact with that, whether if you reject that information, and you know, another example that it's kind of its own subject matter, but the children's story Snow White. You all remember that in the beginning of the cartoon, the witch is looking into the mirror and she says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And the mirror always tells her, "You, O queen, are the most fair and beautiful in all the land. No one is your rival." And then until one day, she asked the mirror, and she said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall," and it said, "Well,
it ain't you anymore.
It's not
Sorry.
you. It's Snow White." And so the witch didn't accept that truth.
Well, she
it wasn't her truth.
No.
That she wanted.
No.
And she went about trying to twist and manipulate the objective truth
and kill the objective truth so that her story could still be the story.
Yes, that's exactly.
So eliminate the competition so that you are now once again the most beautiful until the next time it happens. How many people are you going to kill, Queen?
Your experiences in life and the people that you meet are all mirrors.
Yes.
And a lot of people, if a person or reality ceases to reflect to them their truth, that they are a Guatemalan, you know,
careful,
yeah, whatever gender, whatever they are,
yeah.
if reality and other people cease to reflect that and call them a she or whatever
they are,
stupid pronoun that they make up, then they want to destroy that mirror in that other person, that objective truth. And there's a systematic effort by the adversary to destroy the image of God, to destroy objective truth and replace it with what's called my truth, that is a perversion, that it is not in any way truth.
And it's not sustainable. Creation cannot be sustained by it.
No.
It's just going to be chaos and anarchy. And this is what people don't understand. They're not going to build a better world. They're not going to build a better world. It's not possible when you turn away from truth. You need to call things what they are and learn to deal with things as they are. And I'm not saying that we don't have choices and that we can't change the things that are in our power to change, that God gives us power to change. But there are certain things that are nacho cheese. They're not our jurisdiction and right to change. And the sooner we realize this and start conforming to it and bowing before the law of it, the better off we're going to be, the better off the world is, regardless of how happy that makes everyone, and including me, Keith, and everyone else.
It's the height of idolatry. What it is.
It absolutely is.
Taking a false image and saying that it's truth. We barely scratched the surface on this. I didn't really realize when we thought about, hey, we'll do a video on this thing of my truth, how much there actually is to delve into on that. So maybe we'll get into some of these other things in the future sometime. But hope it's been a benefit of you. Be sure and like and subscribe, hit the thumbs up and all of that. And post down below your comments and questions if you've got some ideas for future videos you'd like us to do. Be sure and make a note down below, and maybe we'll try to do that in the future. Alright, thanks a bunch. You guys stay safe. God bless you, you and your families. And I would just say that it's a time that everyone really needs to get extremely serious in your spiritual life and get your house in order. And do whatever preparations you think you need to do right now. And God be with you. Hope to see you soon.
Bye-bye. Just let me know, do a countdown.
5, 4, 3, 4. You freak.
You are the one counting like the giant green Jack and the Beanstalk.
Oh, dang. Sucking back on some of Grandpa's
No, just
medicine.
quit counting weird. Just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instead of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop being weird, and I won't.
My throat here.
Pay attention. Pay attention. Seinfeld. Don't count weird, and I won't. My God.
Got choked up there. All right, ready?
I am.
All right. Let it out. Let it out. Let it out. Let it out. Take the shot.
What does that mean? I don't know what you're talking about. And you say, I'm a freak.
You're president.
I don't watch him.
Take the shot.
What's he saying?
Huh?
When he says that, what's he mean?
Something like that.
Take the shot.
You know what I mean.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't watch him.
Oh, gosh.
What?
Well,
somebody taking his picture and he's tired of posing?
No, and he's up there trying to get everybody to take the vax.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I say I don't listen to him, I don't listen to him. I thought you meant he was tired of posing and then he was waiting for the media to take his picture.
No.
Alright.
Okay, ready?
I am. Quit counting weird and being weird. I said quit counting weird and being weird, and then I won't get us off track. That's your version of not being weird?
Yeah, okay. All right, here.
Oh,
everybody! Enter the sock puppet. Puppet.
Enter the sock puppet.
Puppet. You could start being the sock puppet.
I don't have a sock that's available.
I can get one for you.
I'm not going to be a sock puppet. If you want me to be a sock puppet, I need to be the puppet before, and we need to plan the session, the video. Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let me think here. Let's see what we're doing.
Oh my God.
Okay. Here we go. All right. Where we at?
Ah.
Okay.
And then it's midnight.
Hey, if you like this video, please click like and subscribe to be notified whenever we release new content, and to help other people find us out there on the vast plains of YouTube land. If you have a question or a topic you'd like for us to do a video about, just leave it in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Later, y'all.